when you were a senior at the University of Pittsburgh.
I was in the marching band. That year, the Pitt football team was chosen to go to the Sugar Bowl.
What year was it?
1956.
Okay.
And the opposition team was Georgia Tech. Now, there was a very exciting time in our country and very turbulent. First, Georgia Tech played in a state that had a governor called Griffith, who made some declaration like, my team is not going to play there if Pitt plays there, a black player, a fellow named Greer.
Rosie Greer?
It wasn't that Greer. That was a more famous Greer. It wasn't Rosie Greer, but it was another black man named Greer.
1956.
1956. So there was this racial thing going on in the country. And the Pitt band, which at that time was all male, there were no women in it. And as a matter of fact, when you march out into the field with the beat of the drums, they would say, and now the all-male 120-piece varsity marching Pitt band. And we'd go, about 20% of the band were black guys. So when we got to New Orleans, being the Sugar Bowl, we were dressed in our uniforms one day to go to lunch at some cafeteria, and the manager said, the black guys will sit over there. At which point, we didn't know that was going to happen. At which point, we all marched out of the band. He lost 120 tickets and food. We all marched out, and we ate all our meals on the train after that. So one aspect of the 1956 Sugar Bowl was this racial component, which, and by the way, Pitt played their black player, and Georgia Tech played. The game was low scoring. It was one touchdown difference. It was Georgia Tech won by a touchdown, and it was based on a penalty that was called against the black player. Whether that was a fair penalty, I don't know. Might have been, I don't know. More exciting than the football game, believe it or not, was the halftime show with the Pitt band. Why? Why was that more exciting? 1956 was the time that this country was, the fear in the country was your kids are going to get polio. That was a terrible disease, and people were afraid of it. Jonas Salk was at the University of Pittsburgh, and he developed his vaccine at that time, in the year plus or minus. At the halftime, the Pitt band came out, did our usual show, and at the end of every show, we would march into the 4 letters P-I-T-T and played the Pitt song, Hail to Pitt. This day in the Sugar Bowl, we went from Pitt to the word Salk, and we played You'll Never Walk Alone. And the audience went wild. This was a halftime show unlike any other. And they were more excited about the band than they were about the football game, because it represented this man who changed the fear of all parents. We're no longer to deal with polio. Now, I've told that story enough times, Nancy's heard it a million times. And last year,
Should I stop the video?
Last year I get the Pitt News. It's not called the Pitt News. It's the alumni magazine. And guess what? They tell the story I just told you. Years after the game.
That's cool.
And I said, Nance, read this. So,
Really
so she wasn't sure whether I was telling what else. It was a remarkable game. It was a remarkable.
That's cool. You're part of that moment in history.
Yeah. It was an exciting time to be there at Pitt, and it was Pitt Medical School was really becoming, it's a great school, and at that time in the 50s, they got a lot of money from the Mellon Foundation to pay for a lot of the programs, and they brought in Jonas Salk and Frank Dixon and all these prominent doctors and researchers. And from then, Pitt Medical School's been tops. All right, Dolly, you got that on your